It is September the 12th of 2020, and I'm here with Ingrid Carlqvist for Rare Foundation. Ingrid, how are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you.
Now, I'm coming into this a little bit blind because our mutual friend told all she told me was it looks like once again the Swedish government is taking you to court for
Yep.
something. Probably, I'm going to guess, probably for journalism.
Yeah.
What's the story? Please let us know.
Well, the story is that me and my colleague and friend Maria Selander, we have this website, Ingrid and Maria, it's called, and we publish op-eds mostly, and sometimes people send in their stuff to us, things that they want to discuss. So like a year ago, I think, we published a story who a woman had written, and it was about she had been thinking about how come there are so many Muslims who work on pharmacies in Sweden these days, and what would happen if there was a shortage of drugs, medicines. Because she is very sickly, so she needs her medicines, and she knows that in Islam, Muslims have a duty to put their own Muslim brothers and sisters first. And so she thought, what would happen if there is a shortage and they take away the medicines for their own, and maybe me and other Swedes don't get their medicines? So this, she thought it was a dilemma that we needed to discuss. And so thought we. So we published it. And then after 6 months or something, we suddenly we were called to the police, and they said this might be what in Swedish is called incitement to ethnic group, a sort of racism, a hate crime. And I said to the police, well, I didn't write that piece. No, but you published it. So you are the one who spread it to many people. And at first I thought they were just going to drop it because it's absolutely crazy. We are journalists, for God's sakes. It's our job to discuss different things in society, some things that could be bad for us. But now, a week ago or so, we had the papers that we are indicted and we will go to court on November 2nd.
Wow. So on November 2nd, you're going to court because you discussed the hypothetical about a shortage of medication because Islam obliges its followers to consider their fellow followers first. What if you have a Muslim pharmacist and so on and so on?
Mm.
And that's considered, I guess, hate speech, which was the great workaround so that freedom of speech could be taken down worldwide.
Yeah,
And everything's going to be hate speech, already is almost. And what, do you have a lawyer on this one?
I do. And that's a good lawyer too. And he says it's absolutely crazy, but you never know because it is not a coincidence that they've come after me and my colleague because we are journalists, even though our former colleagues call us ex-journalists. You know, when you keep on writing the truth and scrutinizing the problems we have, you are not a journalist anymore because journalists, Swedish journalists these days, they are just, they are just uh, propagandists. Is that what you call it?
Yes, propagandist,
For
and
the power.
I think that's actually been probably always been true. There might have been
Yeah.
a brief window in the U.S. where you could get away with telling things that were true now and again, but
Yeah.
it's certainly. I think we're
So they
going.
want to, I think that they want to send a signal. First of all, they would like to shut me up. That will never happen, of course, but they are sending a signal to other journalists who might be thinking about doing their job once again. So that's why they want to shut me up and make my life miserable. That's what they want to do, to frighten me and to make people think that I am a criminal. And you have to know that the law incitement against ethnic groups, you don't have to incite, you don't have to tell people to go out and beat Muslims up or something like that. All you have to do is show contempt. What is that? What is contempt? Does it mean that anyone who reads something or listens to something and feels offended, they can go to the police? So in that case, you don't know what is criminal and what is not.
I'm just going to hazard a guess here. It's not anybody who feels offended, it's anybody who feels offended from a protected group. Because if a Christian's offended or a Jewish person's offended by an Islamic call to exterminate them all, that's not going to be considered hate speech. That'll probably be protected under freedom of religion.
Yeah.
So, what is there a constitutional protection in Swedish law for freedom of speech or freedom of journalism? How does it read if there is?
Yeah, there is. But they don't. Hate crimes is what the police are most focused on these days. They let murderers and rapists run loose. But the so-called hate crime police, they have the most resources. That is what our government is focusing on that is called a narco tyranny, when you let the real criminals just run around and you focus on honest citizens who criticize what the government is doing.
It sounds an awful lot like, like communism, actually. It sounds an awful lot like communism. So you're in court in November, and has your lawyer given you any indication of what could happen should the court come back with a guilty verdict?
Yeah, we could be sentenced. There is up to 2 years in prison for this crime. But I don't think that they would dare do that to put us in prison. So probably they will give us fines. But I do hope that they will say we're innocent, that this is not a crime, because we are doing our jobs as journalists. That's what journalism is about, to find problems in society, discuss them, tell the facts, and let people make up their own minds. Do they like this ideology or do they not?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this is something that's very important that we watch closely. Is there something that the people at Rare Foundation can do to help in the meantime while you're waiting to go to trial or after trial? Is there
Well, you can spread this interview, because I think it's important that people around the world understand what is going on in Sweden. It's been a long time since President Trump talked about Sweden now, and that would be the best thing if he could find out what's going on here. We really need help from the world, because they think the Swedish government, the Swedish journalists, and the establishment, they think that people never find out what's going on in Sweden because they can't read Swedish or listen to Swedish. But it's so important that everybody understand what's going on. And there's been some burnings of the Quran in Sweden by a Danish politician who came over here, and it ended with riots. And I think that this is waking a lot of Swedes up, because Muslims have been living in separate areas for many, many years. And when there is a riot, it's always, it doesn't really concern the Swedes, but now it does. And I think more and more Swedes are finally waking up and seeing that, okay, there is a big difference between us and Muslims. Not all Muslims, of course, but
The dedicated ones. I mean, I think you're talking about Rasmus Paludan from Denmark, and I think it's his mission to get people to see how your system of freedoms and laws are being negated by large numbers of Muslims that are enforcing Sharia on a mob level. And that's certainly what we're seeing in Sweden as a reaction to people just burning something which is their own private property and they have every right to do.
And now the police are saying that if you are burning a Quran, that is the crime that they are indicting me for, enticement of ethnic groups. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Just 2 weeks ago, they were thinking about giving him permission to do it, but now they decided that everyone who burns a Quran is doing a hate crime that they must pursue. It's happening so fast.
Yeah, the replacement.
We are losing free speech more and more for every week in this country.
Well, and replacing it with Sharia, which I think was the plan.
Yeah, of course.
I, it's really horrifying. I really hope that your case, if there's enough spotlight on it, you're right. If there's enough of a spotlight on it, it's quite possible that the Swedish courts will feel compelled to restore people's freedom of speech and right to be critical of organizations, of groups, of philosophies, of religions. I think it's really, really important that this is preserved because, wow, the second you can't criticize an ideology and its
Yeah.
consequences, especially what the ideology as they themselves state it, we go into tyranny at warp 5.
Yeah.
So,
And just think about this. Swedish journalists, they love to write about journalists in other countries that are sent to prison and they don't have the freedom of speech, but they don't care one iota about me and my colleague.